Okay, so before we go off and do the next activity, I just wanted to remind you of this from a couple days ago. Remember, we could consider an angle in standard position that goes through, the terminal arm goes through the point xy, creates this little triangle, r being considered the radius, and it's the hypotenuse of the little right triangle that's there, so you can do r squared equals x squared plus y squared, or just r equals the square root of x squared plus y squared. And then looking at this triangle, given that this is theta, sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so it's y over r. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so x over r, and tangent is y over x. Remembering both of these, I mean, you don't have to write them down, you already have them in your notes, but remember both of them can be used in what we're going to do next. Okay, so next is worksheet just on reciprocal trig functions. So making the connections between sine, cos, and tan, and cosecant, secant, and cotangent. So there's a worksheet that goes along with this. So if you wanted to pause the video now and hand out that worksheet, you can do it, because we're going to do the first question in each section. So hopefully everyone has the worksheet. And we're going to do number 1 and number 11 together. So number 1 is pretty straightforward. You'll be given a bit of information, and then you're asked to find something else. So in this case, I'm given that sine theta is root 2 over 4. I want you to find cosecant. Well, hopefully you remember that cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So you could get the answer right away. If I had to write something, I could say this. This is just saying the reciprocal and you could actually, do the substitution if you wanted. So 1 over root 2 over 4, but of course when you divide fractions you have to take the reciprocal. We get that. These ones are pretty straightforward because it turns out that cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. And so if I want to take the reciprocal, I would just go off and take the reciprocal, and there's my answer for cosecant. Most of the ones, the first 10, are all ones like this. If I give you the cosine, can you tell me the secant? Well, sure, you just flip it. If I give you the cotangent, could you tell me the tangent? Sure, just flip it. Okay, so the first ones are all pretty straightforward. I don't necessarily expect you to write all this part down. If you know right away that it's the reciprocal, you can get the answer right away. Where it gets challenging is in the second half. So questions starting from 11 on. Because this one asked me to find the cosecant, but I don't know the sine. I know the tan. So I'm not given the reciprocal. I got to figure it out. So there's 2 ways you could do this. One, you could draw a picture. Because you know the tan, you can imagine some right triangle, and it doesn't really matter what it looks like. There's theta. And since you know tan is opposite over adjacent, in this case it's root 6 over 12. The opposite is root 6 and the adjacent is 12. So on my triangle, if this is theta, the opposite is right here, so this side is root 6. And adjacent is right here, and this side is 12. What I'm asked to find is the cosecant. Well, remembering the cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, I wish it was the opposite. So in my head, I want to think about sine. If I go back and look at my triangle, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Well, I don't have the hypotenuse, so I got to do a little bit of work. I could call it x, but what I'll probably do is call it r. And then underneath I could do a little bit of math. R squared equals root 6 squared plus 12 squared. Or I can use what I did at the beginning and use this formula. Root 6 squared plus 12 squared. Take the square root right away. When we do this math, root 6 squared means root 6 times root 6. Remember, when you square a root symbol, it disappears and you're left with just 6. You can check that on your calculator. You take the square root of 6, you're going to get some decimal, and then you turn around and square it. Of course, it's going to come back to 6. 12 doesn't have a root sign, so it's just 12 squared, or 12 times 12, which is 144. And we get 150. From grade 11, we realized that 150, we don't want to leave root 150. We can break that up. I can break it up into, and simplify it into 25 times 5. And take the square root of 25 and get 5 root 5. Oh, sorry, not 25 times 5, 25 times 6. 150 is 25 times 6. And so square root of 25 is 5 root 6. Okay. So if I've done that work and figured out and all that, and figured out that this side is 5 root 6, I now can go off and find the sine. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So if I was thinking about sine, it would be root 6 over 5 root 6. But I'm not asked to find the sine. I'm asked to find, so sorry, just opposite over hypotenuse. I'm not asked to find sine, so you might just go straight to this and say, okay, I'll think about sine, but then I'll do the reciprocal. So if I know that sine is root 6 over 5 root 6, I'll just flip it right away and go 5 root 6 over root 6. Of course, just by looking at it, you realize that the root 6 divided by root 6 is going to cancel. And so therefore, the cosecant of theta is 5. So one method on these is to draw a picture of a triangle, and then you can really visualize what it is. Or you could do it without the triangle, going very back to the first slide. In our instance, we're given that the tan is root 6 over 12. So right away, you know what the y value is, and you know what the x value is. So x is 12, y is root 6. Go off and use the r formula to get r. So that's 12 squared plus root 6 squared. Already got that was 150, or 5 root 6. Same math. But you see how I've got all the values without even drawing a picture. There's the r value, there's the x value, there's the y value. So if I wanted to find the cosecant, I can think about sine and just plug in the numbers. Sine is y over r, so it's root 6 over 5 root 6, which is 1 over 5. That was for the sine. I want the cosecant is 5 over 1. So I don't care which method you use. If you can memorize all these ratios for sine, cos, and tan, saying that sine is y over r, cos is x over r, and tan is y over x, then if you're given one of these bits of information, you can get your y and x values, or your x and r values, or whatever. Use the formula for r to get the third side, and then go off and plug in your information. So hopefully you've had a chance to, or you understand those two questions. And I'm going to ask the supply teacher to maybe give you half an hour or so to work on completing those. before you watch the next video on sketching. So good luck.